the Sleepweaver stories, a place for quiet minds and wandering dreams. If you've been enjoying the show, then consider supporting us on Patreon. Members there can get access to exclusive stories and downloads for the nights to come. Now, let us start our stories. So let's settle in, take a deep breath, and let's begin. The Red Shoes by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Karen. She was kind and gentle, but very poor. In summer, she went barefoot, and in winter, she wore heavy wooden shoes that made her feet red and sore. Life was hard, but Karen did her best to stay cheerful. In the heart of the village lived the wife of an old shoemaker. Using leftover scraps, she lovingly stitched together a pair of red cloth shoes for Karen. And though the shoes were clumsy and far from perfect, they were made with care. Karen was grateful. She wore them for the first time on the day of her mother's funeral. They weren't suitable for mourning, but she had nothing else. With bare feet inside the red shoes, she walked behind her mother's coffin through the village. Just then, a grand old carriage passed by. Inside sat a wealthy woman who took pity on the small girl. She spoke with the village clergyman and offered to take Karen into her care. Karen, knowing no better, thought it was all because of her red shoes. But the wealthy woman thought them garish and had them thrown away. Instead, she dressed Karen in neat clothes and taught her how to read and sew. And so Karen grew up, pretty and clever. And when she looked in the mirror, it seemed to whisper back, "You are beautiful." One day, the Queen came to town with her young daughter. All the townsfolk gathered to catch a glimpse, including Karen. The little princess appeared in a window, dressed in white and wearing stunning red shoes. They were nothing like the cloth pair Karen once wore. They were fine leather and gleamed in the sunlight. From that moment on, Karen couldn't stop thinking about those red shoes. When she was old enough to come of age, Karen received a new pair of shoes. She was taken to the city shoemaker to pick them, who displayed rows of lovely slippers and shiny boots. Hidden among them, however, was a pair of brilliant red leather shoes. Karen was enchanted. The old woman who raised her had poor eyesight and didn't notice their colour, and so the red shoes were purchased. Everyone noticed them on the day of Karen's coming-of-age ceremony. From the church door to the altar, eyes followed her feet. Even the solemn figures carved into the walls seemed to gaze at the dancing red leather. Karen, flustered and proud, barely heard the ceremony in her name. Her thoughts were all on the shoes that were adorned to her feet. When the old woman heard what Karen had worn, she was scandalized. "From now on," she said, "you will wear black shoes shoes to church." But the next Sunday, Karen chose the red ones instead. On their way to the chapel, they passed a weathered man leaning on a crutch. He bowed deeply and asked if he might clean their shoes. Karen, of course, put out a foot. "Such pretty dancing shoes," the man murmured. "Be sure they stay with you." He tapped the soles gently. Inside the church, the air was quiet and reverent. But Karen couldn't stop thinking about her shoes. When she lifted the cup of ceremony, she thought she saw them reflected in the gold. The words of that ceremony once more floated past her, lost in the red glow of leather. Afterward, as she stepped toward the carriage to take her home, the man with the crutch whispered once more, "What lovely dancing shoes!" And suddenly, her feet began to twitch. She danced a step, then another, and before she knew it, she was spinning. The coachman had to catch her and pull her into the carriage. But even there, her feet kicked and bucked and twitched. Only once the shoes were taken off did her legs finally come to rest. Of course, the shoes were put away, but Karen couldn't forget about them. Time passed. The old woman grew ill and needed care. It fell to Karen to stay at her side. But one day, news came of a grand ball in the city, and Karen was invited. She looked at the black shoes, then at the red ones. Surely, just wearing them wouldn't hurt anyone. And so, Karen slipped them on. She didn't even make it to the ball. The moment she stepped outside, her feet began to dance. Not gracefully, no, but wildly, down the steps, past the streets, into the woods. Day and night, rain or sun, her legs would not stop. She passed fields and rivers and graveyards. In the stillness of a midnight churchyard, she saw a flicker of light and a figure standing among the trees. It was that old man with the crutch. "Still dancing?" he asked, with a coy smile. Karen tried to stop, to throw off the shoes, but they would not budge. She danced through pain and exhaustion, and over time, the shoes became part of her. She danced through brambles, over roots, through storms, until one night she reached a small house. She knocked. It was the home of a kind woodworker. She begged him to help her. "I want to stop dancing," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "I want to rest." He saw the wildness and the water in her eyes and the blood on her feet and took great pity. He carefully removed the shoes, how no one could say, and carved her a pair of simple wooden ones instead. He gave her a staff to walk with and a warm meal for the night. Karen left her red shoes behind in the woods, and she walked slowly back to the village and found work as a helper in a house. She asked for no praise, no thanks. She cleaned and cooked, helped the children with their lessons, and listened when others read aloud. She no longer daydreamed for hours thinking of how beautiful she would look with her red shoes, but instead looked at the beautiful smiles of the children around her. Sometimes the memory of those red shoes would creep into her dreams, but when she woke, she would look down at her wooden shoes and breathe easy. One quiet morning, the family she worked with went to a gathering and Karen stayed behind. She sat in her little room, and from the open window came the sound of distant music. She smiled, not with envy, but with peace. For a breeze carried the tune to her as she closed her eyes. She didn't need the dance. Her heart was quite content. And when her own time came, she left the world gently, as if carried on that breeze. And no one ever asked about the red shoes again. The Golden Bird by the Brothers Grimm. A great king once had a beautiful garden, and in that garden stood a tree which bore golden apples. These apples were always carefully counted, and as they ripened, the king noticed that each night one would disappear. Furious that he was, he ordered the gardener to keep watch beneath the tree. And so the gardener's eldest son took the first shift. But around midnight, he fell asleep. And by morning, another apple was gone. The second son was no better. He too nodded off and woke to find yet another apple missing. Then the youngest son offered to keep watch instead. Though his father feared for him, thinking the task far too dangerous, he did finally agree. That night, as the clock struck 12, the boy heard a soft rustling in the air. A bird of pure gold swooped down and plucked a glowing apple from the tree. The boy leapt up and loosed an arrow from his bow. It missed, but a single golden feather floated down. In the morning, he presented the feather to the king. All who attended that council agreed it was more valuable than anything in the kingdom. But the king declared, "One feather is not enough. I must have the bird." The eldest son set out to find it. On the road, he came across a fox by the edge of the woods. As he raised his bow to shoot, the fox spoke, "Do not shoot me. I will give you good advice. I know you seek the golden bird. Tonight, you will come to a village with two inns. One is grand and cheerful, the other poor and dim. Stay in the shabby one." But the son scoffed at the fox, fired his arrow anyway, missing, and carried on down the road. And that night, he stayed in the best inn, where he quickly forgot all about the bird. Time passed, and the second son went in search of his brother. He too ignored the fox's advice and was drawn into the lively inn by his brother's call from a bright open window. There he stayed, the bird all but forgotten again. At last, the youngest son asked to go. His father was reluctant, but finally gave his blessing. When he met the fox, he listened politely and promised to heed the advice. "Sit on my tail," said the fox, "and you'll travel swiftly." So they sped through the woods and fields until their hair whistled in the wind. The boy followed every instruction. He stayed in the poorest inn, rode on the fox's tail, and came to a castle where the guards lay fast asleep. Inside, he found the golden bird in a wooden cage. Beside it, a dazzling golden cage and stolen apples. He remembered the fox's warning, but thought how silly it would be to bring back such a bird in a shabby cage. So he swapped it, and at once the bird shrieked. The guards woke, seized him, and brought him to the king of that kingdom. That king told him he would die unless he could bring the golden horse swifter than the wind. The boy agreed and set off again, sad and discouraged. But the fox appeared and chided him gently. "I will help once more. Take the horse, but use the old leather saddle beside it, not the golden one." The boy crept into the stable and saw the sleeping groom, the grand horse, and the 2 saddles. Again, he thought the plain saddle unworthy. As soon as he touched the golden one, the groom awoke and raised the alarm. Now the boy faced death once more, unless he could bring the princess from the golden tower. And again he set off, and the fox once more appeared. "At midnight, the princess goes to bathe. Kiss her and she'll follow, but do not let her say goodbye to her parents." The boy, tired and very confused, followed this plan as well, until the princess wept and begged to bid farewell to her parents. His heart softened, and he agreed. The moment she stepped into the castle, the guards sprang out and seized him. The king of this kingdom demanded the hill outside his window be dug away within 8 days. It was surely impossible, but on the 7th day, the fox appeared and said, "Sleep well now, I will do the work." And in the morning, that hill was gone. The king gave up the princess to the boy. The fox said, "Now we'll take all 3, the princess, the horse, and the bird. When the king offers you the horse, shake hands with the princess last. Pull her into the saddle and ride away." All went perfectly. Then they reached the castle with the bird. The fox told him to say he wished to examine it before trading the horse. As soon as he held the bird, he rode away with it too. Later, the fox said, "Now do me one final kindness. Cut off my head and paws." The boy refused. What a request! The fox sighed and said, "Then promise not to sit beside any river or ransom anyone from the gallows." Bewildered, confused, at odds with what was being said, the boy had no choice but to promise again. Soon, he found his 2 brothers about to be hanged for thievery. Without thinking, he gave in. He paid for their release. Later, while resting by a river, his brothers tricked him and threw him down the bank. They stole the princess, the horse, and the bird, and returned home, claiming all the credit for themselves. The princess wept, the horse would not eat, and the bird would no longer sing. But the boy was not dead. He had fallen into a nearly dry riverbed and lay injured. The fox, strange creature that he was, came one last time and helped him out. "Disguise yourself," he warned. "Your brothers plan to kill you." In disguise, the boy reached the castle. At once the horse began to eat, the bird found its song once more, and the princess smiled. The youngest son revealed the truth of all these strange tales, and the king had the brothers punished, and the boy was married to the princess and named heir to the throne. Years later, he walked once more through the forest and met that old fox again. "Please," said the fox, "cut off my head and paws." This time, the boy agreed, and the fox transformed into a man. None other than the princess's long-lost brother, cursed for many years to wander as a fox. They all embraced, and this wild and strange tale came to an end, and peace reigned in the kingdom.